Welcome to Globewise Entertainment. Today, we're diving into 13 great 1970s movies most Americans haven't seen. These are hidden gems from one of the most creative decades in film history, movies that shocked, amazed, and inspired, yet somehow flew under the radar in the US. If you haven't already, subscribe to Globewise Entertainment now so you never miss more rare and fascinating movie discoveries. And we want to hear from you. Which of these hidden 70s gems are you most excited to watch? Tell us in the comment box below. Get ready, because some of these films are wild, outrageous, and unforgettable. Let's jump in. 13. Terminal Island, 1973. If you think the 70s were all disco, bell-bottoms, and blockbuster hits, think again. Terminal Island is a dark, gritty gem that most Americans have never even heard of, but it deserves a spot in any serious 70s film collection. Set in a near-future dystopia, the film imagines a world where convicted criminals are exiled to a lawless island, completely cut off from society. Sounds intense? That's because it is. What makes Terminal Island unforgettable is its raw, survival-of-the-fittest tension and surprisingly sharp social commentary. It's part action, part psychological thriller, and all edge-of-your-seat drama. The performances are surprisingly grounded, with a cast that brings real humanity to a brutal, chaotic world. The cinematography captures the isolation perfectly. Harsh sunlight, rugged terrain, and desolate beaches set the stage for some truly tense confrontations. Here's the kicker. Terminal Island wasn't a box office hit, and it largely flew under the radar, making it a hidden treasure for movie buffs who love discovering something off the beaten path. For fans of dystopian thrillers like Escape from New York or gritty survival stories, this 1973 classic is a must-watch. So, if you're ready to explore a 1970s movie that's as thrilling as it is overlooked, Terminal Island is your next cinematic adventure. Just don't get stranded there. 12. Messiah of Evil, 1974. Imagine wandering into a fog-drenched coastal town, where everyone seems friendly, until the sun goes down. Messiah of Evil isn't your typical 70s horror, it's a surreal, nightmarish journey into the unknown. Directed by the visionary Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz, this film mixes eerie atmosphere, psychedelic visuals, and an unsettling sense that something is profoundly wrong. The story follows Arletty, a woman searching for her missing father in the mysterious town of Point Dune. She quickly discovers the locals are under the spell of a sinister, supernatural force, one that slowly transforms them into ravenous, zombie-like beings. But this isn't a gore fest. It's a psychological descent into paranoia, isolation, and creeping dread. Every shadow, every distorted reflection, makes the audience question reality. What makes Messiah of Evil unforgettable is its dreamlike, almost hallucinatory style. The movie feels like stepping into a dark, 70s fever dream, where sound design, long haunting shots, and eerie music create a tension you can feel in your bones. Critics of the time overlooked it, but modern horror aficionados have hailed it as a cult masterpiece, a film ahead of its time, blending horror, surrealism, and social commentary. For American audiences, this gem is often missed because it never had a wide release, but streaming platforms and cult film screenings have revived its mystique. Watching it today, you realize why it's called a lost classic, a piece of cinematic history that challenges what horror can be, making you feel like you're exploring a nightmare that's almost alive. If you think you can handle a film that lingers in your mind long after the credits, Messiah of Evil is waiting, and it's one of the 1970s most underappreciated masterpieces. 11. The Last Detail, 1973. If you think you know 1970s cinema, think again. The Last Detail is one of those hidden gems that somehow slipped under the radar for most Americans. Directed by the legendary Hal Ashby and starring the incomparable Jack Nicholson, this film is more than just a military story. It's a raw, honest dive into freedom, rebellion, and the bonds we form in the unlikeliest of places. The movie follows Navy sailors Budusky, Nicholson, and Mulhall, Randy Quaid, as they escort a young sailor, Meadows Otis Young, to a naval prison for a minor offense. But instead of a simple journey, it turns into a road trip of epic proportions, full of mischief, heartfelt moments, and a critique of the rigid military system. Nicholson is electric here, effortlessly blending humor, cynicism, and heart, making Bud Dusky one of his most unforgettable characters. Despite critical acclaim, the film didn't get the mainstream audience it deserved. Maybe it was the frank language, the subtle defiance of authority, or just being overshadowed by bigger blockbusters of the era, but that's what makes discovering The Last Detail today such a treat. It's sharp, irreverent, and surprisingly tender, a perfect snapshot of 1970s counterculture wrapped in a surprisingly small, yet profoundly moving story. Why you should watch it? If you love character-driven films with unforgettable performances and thought-provoking stories, this is a must-see. It's a reminder that some of the best cinematic experiences aren't the ones everyone talks about, they're the ones that quietly stick with you long after the credits roll. 10. The Whole Shootin' Match, 1978. If you think Hollywood blockbusters of the 70s were all car chases and disco fever, think again. The Whole Shootin' Match is a hidden gem that flew under the radar for most Americans, but it left a lasting mark on indie cinema. Directed by Eagle Pennell, this small Texas film captures the lives of two lifelong friends struggling with work, relationships, and the relentless grind of everyday life. What makes it so compelling? It's raw, honest, and incredibly relatable. Unlike the glitzy studio productions of its time, this film feels like peeking into someone's real life, flaws, humor, and all. The characters' dreams, missteps, and occasional victories feel painfully human, making it easy for viewers to connect emotionally. Critics later called it a proto-indie classic, and it inspired a generation of filmmakers who would later shape American independent cinema. But here's the kicker: most Americans have never even heard of it. That's what makes it such a treasure, one of those movies that rewards patient viewers with its charm, authenticity, and surprisingly timeless storytelling. Why you should watch it? Genuine, unscripted feeling performances. A slice-of-life story that hits close to home. Indie filmmaking that influenced future Hollywood auteurs. If you love discovering films that didn't get the recognition they deserved, The Whole Shootin' Match is a must-watch. It's proof that not all cinematic magic comes with a big budget. Sometimes, the smallest films leave the biggest impression. 9. Radio On, 1979. Britain's lost road movie that America missed. In 1979, while Hollywood was busy chasing blockbuster thrills and disco dreams, a quiet, black-and-white film slipped through the cracks. Radio On. It didn't explode at the box office. It didn't win major awards. And in the United States, most moviegoers never even heard of it. But for those who discovered it, Radio On became something unforgettable. Directed by Christopher Petit, Radio On is less about action and more about atmosphere, isolation, and sound. The story follows Robert, a drifting young man who travels across England after learning about his brother's mysterious death. What begins as a simple road trip slowly transforms into a haunting journey through late 1970s Britain, a country changing rapidly, yet emotionally frozen. Shot in striking black and white, the film feels raw and unpolished, almost documentary-like. The landscapes are empty, the roads endless, and the silence often says more than dialogue ever could. It's not a film that tells you what to feel, it lets you feel it. What truly sets Radio On apart is its soundtrack, which quietly became legendary. Featuring music from David Bowie, Kraftwerk, and Reckless Eric, the film captures the mood of a generation on the edge of something new, post-punk, post-hope, and searching for identity. The radio becomes a companion, a memory machine, and a voice in the darkness. American audiences, used to fast-paced narratives and clear resolutions, largely overlooked this film. But that's exactly why Radio On stands out today. It's a time capsule of late 70s alienation, a road movie without glamour, and a portrait of youth disconnected from the world around them. Decades later, filmmakers and critics would recognize Radio On as a cult classic, influencing the minimalist storytelling and visual style of future indie cinema. It wasn't made to please everyone, and that's what makes it powerful. If you're tired of predictable plots and want a film that feels like a forgotten song on an old radio, Radio On is a 1970s masterpiece most Americans never saw, but absolutely should. 8. Lady Snowblood, 1973. Japan's silent revenge that inspired Hollywood. In the early 1970s, while America was busy with gritty crime dramas and new Hollywood anti-heroes, Japan unleashed one of the most stylish and influential revenge films ever made, Lady Snowblood. And yet, decades later, most American audiences still haven't experienced this icy masterpiece that quietly reshaped modern cinema. The story begins in blood and injustice. A woman named Seo is brutally assaulted and imprisoned, her family destroyed by a gang of ruthless criminals. Behind bars, she makes a chilling decision. If she cannot take revenge herself, she will give birth to it. Her child, Yuki, is conceived with a single purpose: vengeance. From the moment Yuki is born, she is trained not to live, but to kill. This shocking premise alone makes Lady Snowblood unforgettable, but what truly sets the film apart is how it tells its story. Yuki grows up cold, emotionless, and deadly, moving through 19th century Japan like a ghost wrapped in white silk. Her weapon of choice? A seemingly delicate parasol concealing a razor-sharp blade. Each assassination is staged like a tragic ballet, snow falling softly as blood splashes violently across pristine landscapes. The contrast is mesmerizing. Director Toshiya Fujita blends brutal violence with haunting beauty, creating a film that feels both poetic and savage. The vivid splashes of crimson against white snow weren't just shocking, they became iconic. Decades later, Quentin Tarantino openly paid homage to Lady Snowblood in Kill Bill, borrowing its structure, visual style, and even its themes of fate-driven revenge. But this isn't just a revenge movie. Lady Snowblood is also a meditation on destiny, trauma, and the cost of living solely for hatred. Yuki is unstoppable, but she's also deeply tragic. A woman denied a normal life, molded into a weapon before she ever had a choice. Every enemy she eliminates brings her closer to justice, and further from humanity. For American audiences unfamiliar with Japanese cinema of the 1970s, this film feels startlingly modern. Its nonlinear storytelling, bold chapter titles, stylized action, and emotional restraint all feel decades ahead of their time. It's not surprising that Hollywood borrowed from it. What's surprising is how many people still haven't seen the original. Lady Snowblood didn't chase box office trends. It didn't cater to Western tastes. And maybe that's why it slipped through the cracks in America. But today, it stands as one of the most important international films of the 1970s, a cult classic that rewards viewers who crave bold storytelling and unforgettable imagery. If you love stylish revenge tales, strong female leads, and films that influenced modern Hollywood without ever asking for permission, Lady Snowblood is essential viewing. A frozen blade, a life shaped by vengeance, and a 1970s masterpiece most Americans are still discovering, one drop of blood at a time. 7. The Tin Drum, 1979. The Child Who Refused to Grow Up. In the late 1970s, Hollywood was busy chasing blockbusters and disco fever, but across the Atlantic, a deeply unsettling masterpiece was quietly shaking world cinema. The Tin Drum, 1979, isn't just a movie most Americans haven't seen, it's a film many were never prepared to see. Set in Germany during the rise of Nazism and World War II, the story follows Oscar Matzerath, a boy who, on his third birthday, makes a shocking decision. He refuses to grow up. From that moment on, Oscar remains physically childlike while his mind matures in disturbing, insightful ways. Armed with his beloved tin drum and an ear-piercing scream that can shatter glass, Oscar becomes both a witness and a protester, observing society's moral collapse without ever fully joining it. What makes the tin drum unforgettable isn't spectacle, it's symbolism. Oscar represents the refusal to accept a corrupt world. While adults around him blindly follow ideology, ambition, and fear, he chooses resistance through stillness. His drum becomes a weapon of memory, pounding out truth in a society desperate to forget. The film doesn't hold your hand that it challenges you, it provokes discomfort, and it forces reflection. Upon release, the tin drum stunned international audiences and critics alike, eventually winning the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film, a rare honor for such a bold, uncompromising story. Yet in the United States, it remained largely unseen, overshadowed by mainstream hits and its reputation as a difficult film. But that's exactly why it matters. This is not a movie made for easy entertainment. It's made for curious minds, lovers of cinema who want stories that linger long after the credits roll. If you've ever wondered how history looks through the eyes of someone who refuses to conform, if you appreciate films that blend art, politics, and psychology, then The Tin Drum is a forgotten 1970s gem you owe yourself to experience. Because some movies don't just show history, they confront it. 6. The Driller Killer, 1979. A gritty underground nightmare Hollywood hoped you'd never discover. In the late 1970s, while America was obsessed with disco, blockbusters, and polished studio films, a very different movie was being made in the shadows of New York City, raw, angry, and completely unapologetic. That movie was The Driller Killer. Written, directed by, and starring Abel Ferrara, this film wasn't created to entertain mainstream audiences. It was designed to unsettle them. Ferrara plays Reno Miller, a struggling painter living in a decaying loft, slowly losing his grip on reality. He's broke. He's angry. He's surrounded by chaos, blaring punk bands, violent street life, and a city that feels like it's collapsing in on itself. New York in the late 70s wasn't glamorous. It was dirty, loud, and dangerous, and The Driller Killer captures that atmosphere better than almost any film of its time. As Reno's mental state deteriorates, so does the film itself. The story becomes less about logic and more about pressure, the pressure of poverty, failure, and isolation. The city closes in on him, and his descent feels disturbingly real. What shocked audiences wasn't just the title, it was the style. This movie looks unfinished. The acting feels uncomfortable. The sound design is chaotic. And that's exactly why it works. The Driller Killer doesn't feel like a movie, it feels like a breakdown caught on camera. When it was released, the backlash was immediate. The film became infamous overseas, landing on censorship lists and sparking controversy that followed it for decades. In the US, it quietly disappeared, too extreme and too unconventional for mainstream success. And yet, over time, something changed. Film historians, critics, and underground cinema fans began to recognize what Abel Ferrara had really made, one of the earliest and most honest portrayals of urban psychological collapse in American cinema. Today, The Driller Killer is no longer dismissed as shock value. It's studied as a cult classic, a time capsule of a city and an era that Hollywood usually sanitized. Most Americans never saw it. Many still avoid it. But for those who do discover it, the film leaves a lasting impression, uncomfortable, unforgettable, and deeply human. It's not an easy watch, it's not meant to be. And that's exactly why The Driller Killer remains one of the most overlooked and misunderstood films of the 1970s. 5. Dirty Ho, 1979. Next up on our journey into forgotten 1970s gems is the wildly underappreciated martial arts comedy Dirty Ho, from 1979, a movie that's equal parts action, humor, and sheer audacity. Set in Imperial China, the film follows a legendary thief and master conman, Dirty Ho, who gets entangled with a seemingly naive yet surprisingly cunning martial arts student. What begins as a playful rivalry quickly spirals into a full-blown battle of wits, skills, and over-the-top kung fu choreography. What makes Dirty Ho so captivating isn't just its inventive fight scenes, but the way it blends comedy with masterful martial arts. Every fight is practically a dance, every joke lands with precision, and the characters' clever schemes keep you guessing until the very end. It's a rare mix of slapstick and strategy that you don't often see in today's cinema. Despite being praised by critics and hardcore kung fu fans, this film somehow slipped under the radar in America, making it a hidden treasure for viewers seeking something different from the usual 1970s Hollywood fare. Its combination of quirky humor, dazzling stunts, and unforgettable characters makes it perfect for anyone wanting to experience the wild creativity of martial arts cinema during the decade. If you thought the 1970s were all about grindhouse and blockbusters, Dirty Ho will completely surprise you. It's a reminder that some of the decade's best films were quietly crafted outside the mainstream spotlight, and now, thanks to streaming, they're ready to dazzle a whole new generation. Fun fact, Dirty Ho was directed by Lau Kar-leung, one of the most innovative martial arts directors of his time. Fans of martial arts cinema often consider it a hidden masterpiece, combining comedy and kung fu like few films ever have. So, if you're looking for a 1970s film that's hilarious, action-packed, and completely underseen in America, Dirty Ho is an absolute must-watch. For Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, 1970. Step into a dreamlike world where reality bends, innocence clashes with temptation, and every shadow hides a secret. Valerie and Her Week of Wonders isn't just a movie, it's a surreal journey that blends fairy tale whimsy with haunting Gothic imagery. Set in a mysterious European village, we follow Valerie, a young girl on the cusp of womanhood, as she navigates a series of strange and magical events. From encounters with enigmatic vampires to bizarre transformations, the film weaves together fantasy, horror, and eroticism in ways that were decades ahead of its time. Its striking visuals, featuring misty forests, baroque castles, and surreal dreamscapes, make every frame feel like a painting come to life. While most Americans have never seen this gem, it's hailed in cult circles as a masterpiece of experimental cinema. Its influence echoes in films by directors like Guillermo del Toro and Jean-Pierre Jeunet, showing how 1970s European cinema pushed the boundaries of storytelling and visual artistry. Whether you're drawn to haunting Gothic tales, experimental narratives, or simply want to experience a movie unlike anything Hollywood was making in the 1970s, Valerie and Her Week of Wonders is an unforgettable journey. 3. The Passenger, 1975. A hidden masterpiece you've probably missed. Hey Globewise entertainment fans. If you think you've seen all the classics of the 1970s, think again. Today, we're diving into a thrilling, often overlooked gem, The Passenger, 1975. Directed by the legendary Michelangelo Antonioni and starring Jack Nicholson, this movie isn't your usual 70s flick. It's a slow-burning, hypnotic thriller that explores identity, existential dread, and the allure of danger. Nicholson plays David Locke, a disillusioned journalist who assumes the identity of a dead arms dealer while traveling through North Africa. What follows is a suspenseful, tense journey of self-discovery, moral ambiguity, and a haunting look at the human desire to escape one's own life. What makes The Passenger truly stand out isn't just the story, it's Antonioni's signature style: long, mesmerizing takes, minimal dialogue, and breathtaking cinematography that make every frame feel like a painting. In fact, one continuous 7-minute tracking shot is often cited as one of the most impressive sequences in cinema history. Despite its brilliance, many Americans have never seen it in theaters or on streaming platforms, making it a hidden gem for cinephiles and thrill-seekers alike. If you love films that linger in your mind long after the credits roll, this is one to add to your watch list. Fun fact, Jack Nicholson considers this one of his favorite performances, and critics often praise it as a career-defining role, yet it never got the mainstream attention it deserved. So, if you want a movie that's mysterious, stylish, and hauntingly beautiful, The Passenger is calling your name. 2. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, 1973. the revolutionary film you probably missed. Imagine a movie so daring, so politically charged, that it was pulled from theaters and banned on TV for decades. That's exactly what happened with The Spook Who Sat by the Door, 1973. Based on Sam Greenlee's novel, this film isn't just a spy story, it's a bold commentary on race, power, and American society in the 1970s. The story follows Dan Freeman, the first black CIA officer. Freeman uses his training not to climb the corporate ladder, but to empower his community, teaching ordinary people how to resist systemic oppression. It's a tale of strategy, rebellion, and the fight for justice that hits harder today than ever before. Why haven't most Americans seen it? The film's revolutionary message scared the establishment. After its release, it faced censorship, distribution problems, and was effectively buried, only resurfacing decades later as a cult classic. Critics now call it one of the most provocative and socially conscious films of the 1970s, yet it remains largely unknown outside film circles. For fans of thrillers, political drama, or films that challenge the status quo, this movie is a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. Its influence echoes in modern cinema and pop culture, inspiring conversations about race, inequality, and empowerment that are still relevant today. Fun fact: despite its initial suppression, the movie has gained a loyal cult following and is now celebrated in film schools as a revolutionary classic. If you love discovering movies that the mainstream missed, this is a must-watch. And trust us, its message resonates even more in today's world. 1. Lisztomania, 1975. If you think you've seen it all from the 1970s, think again. Lisztomania is one of those wild, audacious films that almost no one in the US has experienced, and it's an unforgettable ride. Directed by the legendary Ken Russell, this psychedelic musical biopic isn't your typical story about a composer. Instead, it transforms the life of Franz Liszt into a larger-than-life, rock-and-roll-inspired spectacle that blends classical music with surreal visuals and an outrageous sense of humor. Imagine a world where Liszt becomes a pop icon, adored by screaming fans and caught in a whirlwind of scandal, love, and absurdity. The film's extravagant costumes, over-the-top sets, and jaw-dropping performances, especially Roger Daltrey's portrayal of Liszt, make it feel like a fever dream brought to life. Despite its brilliance, Lisztomania was polarizing in its day, and mainstream America largely missed out. That's what makes discovering it now so exciting. You get to experience the 70s like few ever did. Bold, unrestrained, and completely unlike anything Hollywood would dare make today. Why you should watch: if you love films that push boundaries, embrace weirdness, and deliver unforgettable visuals, this is a must-watch. Plus, it's perfect for fans of music, surrealism, and cinematic audacity. That wraps up our journey through 13 great 1970s movies most Americans haven't seen. These hidden gems prove that the 70s weren't just about blockbusters. They were a playground for bold, unforgettable cinema. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Globewise Entertainment so you never miss more hidden treasures from Hollywood's past. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 70s gems surprised you the most, or which one are you planning to watch first? Drop your favorite movie in the comment box below. We love seeing your pics. Thanks for watching, and remember, at Globewise Entertainment, the classics are just the beginning.